Our theme this month has been Leaders of Light, and we began the month talking about taking care of our lighthouse, that we are each a lighthouse for God, that when we keep our eyes single, our whole body is full of light, and that in order to be a light out there, we have to take care of our light within first. And then last week we talked about living our dreams, that I asked you the question, what do you really want? Because our deepest heart's desires are the way that this light needs to express out into the world. That we're not here just to sit still in meditation and be in light, but we're here to express. And there's a natural thing that wants to be expressed, and it's not something other than what we want. It's not something over here that I have to go and figure out how to want. I inherently want that. It's the divine wanting itself to express. So I was inviting us to really look deeply, not just the surface dreams, but to go really deep into our heart and to our soul. What do I really, really want? And to then start thinking within myself of how can I carry that out into the world? How can I start bringing my dreams into fruition? And so this week, sort of like our reading, it always returns back to the beginning. We're going to go back within, now that we're all been talking about sharing our light, and we're talking about the infant Christ, that baby infant. And I'm using the word Christ because it's Christmas, and we are celebrating the story, particularly of the Jesus and Joseph and Mary, which for many of you may know that's an archetype. There's been this story of the Virgin and the divine child throughout different cultures. It was Jesus' birth was very intentionally placed at the darkest time of year. But what it's pointing to is that divine self. So whether you resonate more with the Buddha self within you or the Atman self, which is in Hinduism, that holy individuation of God, that's what the Christ self is referring to. It's God. There's God the infinite, and then there's a unique individuation of that God, and each and every one of us is that unique individuation, where that just as we each have our own thumbprint, we each have our own soul print, and that's the Christ essence to which I'm referring to. So I'd like to invite you, if you're willing, to just close your eyes for a minute. And if you can, if you've ever seen, Jesus was talking about, in the Gospels he talks about to return to heaven, we have to be like a child. But in the Gospel of Thomas, he said it's like a baby. So what I want you to do, if you can you recall a picture of yourself soon after you were born? A baby picture of yourself that you've seen at one point in your life. And if not, based on other pictures as you've gotten older, can you create a picture in your mind's eye of what you look like as a baby? And when you have sort of an image, bring that image down into your heart. And I want you just to take a few brief moments of breathing into this image of you as a baby in your heart. And I want you to feel into your own infancy. Then when you're ready, if you could open your eyes. Do you notice your heart softening when you feel that infant energy in you? Do you feel yourself wanting to nurture this infant, to hold it, to embrace it, to love it, to protect it? That this infant energy this Christ energy is pure and it is innocent. And that is the essence. This is the essence of the talk today, that's our golden key to the divine, is to stay connected to our infant self, that purity and that innocence of ourself. And it was always there. It's been there since the day we were born. But sometimes we get confused with innocence and naivete. So what happens is we start to get older and we grow. This world is challenging. You have to fight for things you want sometimes if you're a little kid. Someone takes your toy. But as we grow, we realize life isn't that simple. So how do we maintain this purity? And then sometimes when we remain want to stay in that purity, we pretend there's no darkness. That's how sometimes we do it. I know for me that's what happened. Being the youngest and having 3 older brothers, I was very well protected and taken care of, which I'm, on the one hand, very grateful, but I remember going to college and they used to call me, what did they call me? Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm. I've never actually seen that movie, but that's what they kept calling me. And I didn't know. And it was because I just had no clue about the world, really, because I had been so protected. And I maintained that because I wanted to keep that innocence pure. So I was always, there was these moments. College was a rather shocking experience for me because I wasn't worldly. And that's when I started getting interested in this idea of innocence and naivete. You know, innocence can look at darkness and understand it. It's wise. It's not naive to our darkness. And that's really important as we grow in our journey, that we cannot be spiritually mature in our purity if we cannot face our own darkness and other people's darkness. You know, I've talked sometimes about my brief foray into the acting world. And one of the things that drew me to it, that I liked about it, was that when you took on a role, you had to be that person. You had to find those qualities within yourself. So if there was somebody who was full of rage, you had to be able to contact and connect with the rage within yourself. You couldn't say, as an actor or an actress, you can't say, that's their anger, that's their rage, or that's their issue. You have to learn how to find that within yourself. So suddenly, I remember there was a girl in my acting class, and I have no idea what scene she had to play, but she had to embody rage, and she couldn't do it. So the teacher gave her some bat and something to hit, and he goes, think of someone you really don't like or something you're angry in, and she just couldn't do it. She's just going like this. Like, she could not access that rage within her. And yet, until we're able to see that everything out there is also in me, we can't begin to heal it and face it. The purity in our heart is still sort of protected in a way from the challenges and the difficulties of the world. And what that means is that we can and by the way, by knowing it's in us, that also says that I don't always have the best intentions. And I have to face that in myself. So the interesting thing about dreams, so the monastics are very aesthetic, don't have dreams, just go off into the mountains, because dreams create desire, and desire is what starts creating our manipulative mind. I'm going to try to get what I want, sometimes at other people's expense, or it's not always the right thing, but I'm really intent on getting my dream to happen. My desires start to take over, and I start to sully that purity. If we don't know that about ourselves, then darkness starts to come in. These are all ways darkness starts to enter into our life if our purity is naive. Part of this is on my mind this week because I had an interesting call. And I'm going to talk about one specific situation, but I just want to say this isn't just an isolated person that happened once, but I've come across this over and over again. There is a spiritual teacher who has abused many women, has plagiarized, has done many horrible, despicable things, and yet he's absolutely brilliant, charismatic, and somehow he seems to wiggle his way out of it. One would some might call him a sociopath. And a sociopath because there is no conscience there. And they're saying that there's more and more sociopaths happening in our world in leadership positions because, I don't know how they know that, but that's what they're saying. I read an article about it. And because you don't need to have a conscience, so it works really well in the world, that you can manipulate and get the things that you want. And what happens in the spiritual world, because we're trying so hard to be pure and spiritual, we don't see it. We're just going, oh, I just see the good in them. I see the light in them. That is not what that Christ divine presence is. It's not so pure that it can't see manipulation. So what's happening is there's going to be an article in the New York Times about him coming out in the next week or two, and I was contacted to say, could I support blocking by a woman who had been abused by him. And the reason why she's gathering support is because there's still a lot of teachers who are supporting him, who he's that good. You can read his whole record, and yet he convinces everyone that no, it's them. They are messed up, and no, he's done it over and over again. He's convinced therapists, and it's an amazing thing, this sociopathic. So because she was so hurt and sees what he's doing, she was asking for my support. Because I had some contact with him, not a lot. And the way it works, and this is I love integral theory. I love New Thought. I was frustrated. I know most people don't care about this, but it mattered to me that integral theory seemed to not understand New Thought. It had very, very valid criticisms of New Thought, but it was missing the essence of what we teach. It was frustrating me. This spiritual leader had a bad record. They said he went to therapy. He was totally a changed man. So I believed, this is an integral world, so I believed him. And I liked him because he was bringing something to the integral world that no one else was. So I emailed him, and I said my challenges. He emailed me back in less than an hour. He said, this is great. Let's talk. And so I'm excited. Here's this leader who wants to talk with me, is interested in my ideas. We create a phone session. We talk for an hour. The first 45 minutes are heaven for me. He's curious. He understands what I'm talking about, which most people don't. And he cares about something that I care about. And it was just a very dynamic, clear conversation. He's excited about it. He's interested. And he says one thing that was like red flag. And because of his past, I was conscious of the red flag as it was happening. And then by the end, he was like, so if you write, this is great. If you write a 25-page academic paper and give it to me, I'll give it to Ken Wilber. We'll get it published in the Integral Journal, and you will be the New Thought lineage holder in the integral world. That's how the conversation ended. I'm like, woohoo, I get to be the lineage holder. Fortunately, I don't have a lot of ambition that way. So I'm like, well, first of all, New Thought doesn't work that way. We don't have lineage holders. And I don't fully identify as New Thought, singularly, as many do, so I would never want to be the face of New Thought. And secondly, who's he to say who's the lineage holder of New Thought? It was just sort of like, that was really incongruous. I'm like, wait a minute. And one of the things he had been saying was that he was secretly learning religious science from Emerson Institute and don't tell anyone. There's a lot of characteristics you start seeing in sociopathic behavior. But here's the thing. All the integral leaders were saying, oh no, he's reformed. He's appealing to me because he's saying, yes, I think what you're saying is great, and I want you to write this paper. So I'm getting validated, and not only validated, but, I can help you with getting out there. Fortunately, I am grateful. I have many shadow sides, but ambition is not a huge big one. And I have this connection with the heart, and they just kept saying, I couldn't do it. I'm like, there's something off here. This guy, what he's offering, I knew enough about his past behavior. I'm like, I can't. So I wrote him a couple emails, and finally I just said, no, I can't do this. And then it was less than a year later, people in the integral world were saying, oh, this guy's doing the same behavior again. But it was hard, because at that time when I said no, I wasn't getting any validation. All the validation was saying, yeah, he's good. And so I had to ask myself, am I sabotaging myself? I have this dream, and here's someone offering my dream. Do I not believe I'm worthy of this? Or is it because I authentically think that there's something wrong with him? And see, this is all these twisted games. and when I say it's not the only... And so, anyways, fast forwarding, he continues to manipulate, and people believe him, which is why it's so hard to stop him in his behavior, because he's so good at what he does. So even though this happened a couple years ago, he's still going strong. And so now there's a group of people who are saying this has got to stop. He's just hurting too many people, which is why it's coming up. Unfortunately, the article is supposed to come out on Christmas Day on New York Times. I hope it doesn't. But to say that that's not the only time that's happened to me. There's been another time where a friend of mine, she had the second position in CSL home office, and she wanted me to come work. And she was off, and I didn't want to do it. And she was like, well, you can make 3 times as much money as you ever made as a minister, and just think of all the power you're going to have. And I'm sitting there listening, I'm thinking, wait a minute, isn't that what Satan used on Jesus? Money, power. She didn't appeal to oh, you're going to make the world a better place, or what a beneficial presence. And when you're a minister and you don't make much money, that's not a small thing. And she knows that. And she appealed to that. And unfortunately, again, I was able to say no, but I think, and again, it's not just to say it happens from out here. I can do it to myself. Manipulate my thinking. See, we would not be manipulatable if we didn't have things that we wanted, if we didn't have secret agendas. So we're all this is that secret darkness that's going on inside of us all the time. So we have this pure, innocent child that we just got in contact with at the beginning of the talk. But then we have all these other things that we have, and we can slightly make little things, compensations for ourselves of why it's okay to do this or to do that, or why someone else can come in and manipulate me. And it's important, if we're going to be leaders of light, to be conscious of our own darkness and of other people's darkness. Being pure is not about being blind. Being pure is not about being afraid of the darkness. This pure, innocent Christ life is fearless. Christ light is fearless. It is infinitely wise and infinitely fearless. It can face any darkness. It can face any darkness. So if you find yourself retreating or not seeing something, it's because you believe it's more powerful than that Christ light within you. And that's the second point. The Christ light is not only not naive, it's infinitely wise. It's not weak. It's infinitely powerful. That's what this whole amazing holiday and time of year is about. You have this infant Christ there's a holiday that now celebrates the Christ within all of us, this pure, innocent, tiny being that's within all of us, and it impacts our whole culture. Whether you think it's within us or if you think it's Jesus the Christ, whether it's Hanukkah and it's a single candle light that lasts for 8 days, the point, or solstice, that one light in the midst of the darkness, the idea is that light is more powerful than all the darkness, and we need to know that. We need to know that this light within us is extraordinarily powerful. I was just reading, Julian has all these Christmas books about the story in World War II where 10 million, 10 million people died, combination of both. Not World War II, World War I. And there was a time in France, it was Christmas, it was December 23rd, and the Germans took refuge in a monastery, and they started doing a Christmas Eve service and singing Christmas carols. And the British heard them on the other side, and they started singing Christmas carols, and they were singing sort of back and forth. And this went on for 2 days. Just all the fighting just slowed down. And then the officers crossed no man's land to talk with one another. And on Christmas Day, they came out onto no man's land to honor the dead that were lying there. And they did a service. They all took their hats off, and they did a service. And they exchanged some things with each other, because some of the Germans had family in England. Some English people had known some people in Germany. And they did their service, and then they walked. And on Christmas night, they sang the one Christmas carol they all knew, Silent Night. And then the war begins again, takes up, and they're fighting, and there's violence. But there's something that they all responded to that stopped even a great war, what they call the Great War, World War I, that stopped everything in its track. And it's the purity of this light, that when we feel it, it overcomes everything. The integral world is very spiritual, or is very developed. And I don't mean just intellectually. They do a lot of spiritual practice. They call it non-duality, where they are experiencing spirit not only in the spiritual but form. That's non-dual, where there's nothing other. So I experience spirit in the invisible and in matter. Everywhere is spirit. That's like considered at the sort of the ultimate spiritual experience. And yet, as I was in this integral world, I was like, there's something missing. I can't figure out what it is. And after this whole thing with the spiritual teacher, and people couldn't see in the integral world the abuse he was doing, and they kept getting manipulated, I pulled away from it, and I didn't know where what was next for me. And that's when people started handing me books, completely uninvited by me. They just said, I think you'll like this, about these monks on Mount Athos. And these monks are all about finding that pure heart, about becoming that pure heart. And what amazed me is, first of all, as I read about them, the words were gentle, kind, lightness, radiate love. But it wasn't pushing darkness away. the way they get to that place of gentleness, purity, kindness, lightness, play, the power that people feel being in their presence, that they can see, their soul is seen right into, is by the monks get there by working on their own darkness and the darkness of the world. I've been reading the Philokalia, which is of the Desert Fathers, and what amazes me is how well they know darkness. And before, I never was interested in that. I wanted to only know about light and truth and freedom and joy and peace. And that's just like, well, that's just so dark. And they're always talking about it, but they're not talking about it. The way I'd always heard about it is they talk about it to sort of give it power, but actually they were overcoming it. They were seeing it so clearly that when it started to show up, they could stop it so quickly in their own heart that they became beings of light. I thought, wow, they spend all this time understanding darkness, and the result is they're becoming lighter and lighter and lighter because they are facing all the darkness within them and in the world, because they do constant prayers for the darkness in the world as well. And they are masters. I thought, man, Freud has nothing on these people. They know this. Like, I sit there and I'm like, how do they know my darkness so well? And then they know our inner world. That's what our inner child is, our inner infant. It is infinitely powerful. It is more when people are in that presence, when we are in the presence of our own infinite nature, our infant child, we are experiencing a power that transcends all duality. We are experiencing a power that transcends all darkness. And it is so important because at this time of year especially, if we are aware of any darkness that is within us, if we are experiencing any darkness within our family relationships, within our work life, within the world around us, everything is accentuated by the fact that it's also darker outside, that our days are the shortest that they have ever are all through the year. Now we have lots of clouds and rain. So it's accentuating whatever darkness we may already be feeling. The darkness outside is accentuating that, reflecting that, and it can get people really, really down. It can get all of us really down. And so it is a time where we need to just stop, literally stop and adore. That's why I love the Christmas carols. If we just remember that what we are adoring is that infant, our own infant within our heart. Take 5 minutes, which if you're in the middle of a workday, that seems like eternity. But do it. Do it. It's a demand of this season, of the darkness of the season, of the darkness of what's ever happened. Take 5 minutes and be with that infant, your infant self in your heart. Spend 2 minutes just feeling into it. And as you're feeling into it, remind yourself that this infant that you are, that you have a picture of, is infinitely wise. It has zero fear. It is defenseless. It does not need to be protected. It is infinitely powerful. There is no darkness that can overcome this beautiful infant that you are. Spend 5 minutes doing that. And then 5 minutes again if it comes back. It's been interesting as I've been with this talk, and really I keep doing it. Every time I think about it, I go down, and my heart space, it's been like burning up on fire. It's been incredible that if we give ourselves really to that infant self, it's real, by the way. It's not just a metaphor. It's not just a symbolic. It's not just an archetype. That this infant, there was a time I was telling some people in a class where I was visioning all the time, and I kept seeing this huge baby above me, like this. And I'm like, what is this baby? Because it's real. There's an infant pure energy within every one of us, and that's the thing that stopped World War I, where everybody stopped and sang Christmas carols together. It's the power that can change everything. Give yourself to that Christ light within you. Take the time. Your heart will start to burn with a fire and a joy and a lightness of being that will overcome all the darkness. Now is the time to be doing that. There is a lot that people are, we have the presidential election, we have the violence. There's so much happening, so much rage, fear, scariness, and then we have our own individual lives. Nurture the light within you. Every time you hear a Christmas carol, sing it to yourself. Sing it to the infant within you. Can you do that? Every time you hear a Christmas carol, every time you're in a mall, sing it. It's singing to the infant.